It is 9:10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 28th day of April 2026. This is episode 1309 of Bitcoin, and acting AG Todd Blanche confirms code is not a crime in yet another Department of Justice pivot. We've heard this before. I don't see how it's helping people like Roman Storm and all the rest of the guys, you know, Tornado Cash and Samurai Wallet and all those dudes. But here we have yet one more announcement from the Attorney General, or at least the acting Attorney General, saying that code is not a crime. And of course it's not a crime because the Ninth Circuit Court, the Federal Appeals Court, Ninth Circuit, which would be the West Coast side, they said that in the 90s. They upheld that writing code is free speech, protected free speech under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. That was a long time ago, and we're still here having to have people like Todd Blanche come out and say, yeah, code's protected. Code is not a crime. And that's what bugs me about this is he said code is not a crime. No, Todd. Code is protected free speech under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. There's actually a real difference in those two statements. Hopefully, we'll get a little bit more out of that when we do the article. Now, a Bitcoin-backed Visa card? Maybe. Maybe it is what we think it is. Maybe it's not. We'll find out. Trump was lambasting prediction markets and saying the whole world has turned into a casino the other day. And, well, lo and behold, he's backtracking. I don't know why, but we're going to find out. Litecoin is also backtracking to the tune of 13 block reorganization of the Litecoin chain. We'll tell you why. Yeah, US SEC is seeking a commitment on eligible asset rule of 85%. And if you don't know what that means, you will when I get finished with you. Tim Draper, man, he's using fear-based marketing, except I guess kind of in a good way. Who knows? Oh, by the way, tomorrow, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell will deliver his last remarks as the sitting chair of the Federal Reserve. But meanwhile, right now, the Fed confirms that what tech developers have feared for 2 years. And that's out of a Federal Reserve study. So we'll get to that one. And Jack Dorsey bought some Bitcoin for his company, Block. But first, I had a dream last night. And it turns out I've been having a recurring dream about a bunny rabbit. Except this is not your standard issue, fluffy, cuddly bunny. No, this thing is like borderline monstrosity. It's unnerving. And it's like it was the last dream I had before I woke up this morning. And I was like, oh my God. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach that I've been having this dream for a while. Have you ever had that feeling when you recognize that you're starting to have a recurring dream? If you guys ever have had those feelings where all of a sudden you realize just one day you wake up and you go, holy crap, I've been having that dream for a while, but you only just discovered it, let me know. Give me a boost for the show and let me know your experience when you finally discovered that you were having a recurring dream, because that by itself is unnerving. But this bunny rabbit, dude, this bunny rabbit's like 35 pounds. I mean, it's like a medium-sized dog, medium to small-sized dog. And it's really fat and mangy. And it's supposed to be a white bunny, but it's got like it's dirty. It's got like gray, gray looking oil stains all over it. But the weirdest part is that I know it's sick. This is why it's so freaking unnerving, because the body is like, the bunny body is like all lopsided, like it's just riddled with tumors or something going on inside. it's a nice bunny. It doesn't attack anything. It's just, it keeps coming up to me. And every time I see this thing, it makes me wig out in my dreams. So I just had to get that off my chest. I had to put it out into the ether so that the universe could hear the fact that I need to stop having this dream. It's freaking me out. So let's move on into the rest of the show. Acting AG Todd Blanche confirms code is not a crime in DOJ pivot. Brian Quarmby is writing this one for Cointelegraph. United States Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said the United States Department of Justice and the FBI are no longer targeting blockchain developers over platforms used for illegal activity, instead shifting focus to users engaged in financial crimes. Speaking at a Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, actually the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, alongside FBI Director Kash Patel and Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Grewal on Monday, Blanche said that the approach to enforcement has significantly changed under the Trump administration. The acting attorney general explained that as long as developers have nothing to do with illicit activities, the DOJ and FBI will have no reason to go after them, noting that, quote, "We have fundamentally changed the game when it comes to our investigations." Quote, "The basic principle is that if you are developing software, if you are a coder, if you are part of that process and you are not the third-party user, and you are not helping and knowing about the third part, what the third party is using it for, or what you developed to commit crimes, then you are not going to be investigated and you are not going to be charged," he said. Well, the comments mark a shift in tone from the U.S. government, which has taken strong action against the developers of platforms like Tornado Cash. The crypto mixer and privacy protocol face significant enforcement actions over illicit activity facilitated on the platform, such as money laundering and sanctions evasion. Tornado Cash was sanctioned by the Office of Foreign Assets Control in August of 2022 before the sanctions were lifted in November of 2024. Developers Roman Storm and Roman Semenov were indicted in August 2023. Storm was convicted in August of 2025, while Semenov remains at large. Storm has denied any wrongdoing. Let's see if there's anything more to that story. Yeah, here we go. Blanche's comments were seen as positive within the crypto community, but some argued that more work needs to be done to provide developers with more clarity. Responding to Blanche on X, Coin Center Executive Director Peter Van Valkenburg said it was, quote, "a better message than developers have heard from the DOJ in recent years, but the message still leaves room for doubt. Quote, "The real question is where the DOJ draws the line between publishing non-custodial software and helping or, quote, knowing about a bad user." Van Valkenburg pointed to a court case in which developer Michael Llewellyn sued the DOJ for pre-enforcement clarity on whether publishing his Ethereum-based crowdfunding tool constituted as money transmission. The case was dismissed in late March, with the Texas court finding that Llewellyn had failed to demonstrate that there was a credible threat of enforcement from the DOJ. Quote, "DOJ is publicly acknowledging that developers are still sleeping with one eye open. At the same time, DOJ is telling the courts that Llewellyn should not be allowed to ask for legal clarity because there is no credible threat," he said, adding, quote, "If the law is so clear, why are devs sleeping with one eye open? If the law is so clear, why fight to have the case dismissed?" End quote. The DOJ's change in approach has been taking shape for more than a year. In April of 2025, Blanche released a memo explaining how the DOJ would handle enforcement differently moving forward. The memo outlines a commitment to ending regulation by prosecution under which developers will not be targeted for the actions of users of their platforms or for unwitting regulatory violations. Quote, "I don't want any platform to look at the DOJ or the FBI as somebody who's going to just cause them a lot of problems," Blanche said at the Las Vegas conference. Yeah, well, Blanche, we'll see, won't we? Why don't you drop the case against all the people from Samurai and Tornado Cash. Make a good faith effort. Say, hey, we actually mean what we say when we get up on stage here at the Bitcoin conference and we say things and words fall out of our mouth. It's not just bullshit. And until these guys basically are let go, I don't believe a word of this. And Peter Van Valkenburg, he understands what my issue with this entire thing was. It's this one, where is it? It was over here. Hold on for a sec. Okay, yeah. The basic principle is that if you are developing software, if you are a coder, if you are part of that process and you are not the third-party user and you are not helping and knowing the third party is using what you developed to commit crimes, you are not going to be investigated and not going to be charged. So, where's the problem? You are not helping and you are not knowing that the third party is using what you developed. That is vague. That's vague to the point that this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of calling bullshit. It's not clear at all what Mr. Blanche is trying to say. Other than keeping it purposely vague so that they can continue on doing what they're doing. How do you prove that you didn't know? How does the DOJ prove that you did? What does helping actually mean? I mean, knowing about something you either knew or you should have known is a classic courtroom thing that you either knew or you should have known. What is helping? By literally developing the tool itself, that can completely be construed as helping somebody commit a crime if they use the tool that I built to commit the damn crime. This isn't even suit speak. This, honestly, it's like Todd just wanted to get up there on the Bitcoin stage at the Bitcoin conference and just talk. I don't buy any of this until the Romans are lit off, both Storm and Semenov, and anybody else that's had anything to do with Tornado Cash and anything to do with Samurai, they need to be let go. The case needs to be dismissed at the level of the DOJ. Otherwise, this is all bullshit. Now, moving on to Visa. Avon launches Bitcoin-backed Visa card offering up to $1 million credit lines without asset sales. Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine. Avon has introduced a Bitcoin-backed credit card that allows users to borrow against digital assets without selling holdings, marking a shift in crypto-linked consumer finance, according to statements shared with Bitcoin Magazine. The Avon Bitcoin Visa card, unveiled today at the Bitcoin Conference 2026 in Las Vegas, provides a credit line of up to $1 million secured by Bitcoin collateral. The product targets long-term holders seeking liquidity without triggering taxable events tied to asset sales. The card combines a revolving credit line with fixed-term loan options, offering repayment periods of up to 10 years. Interest rates for both structures start at 7.99% annual percentage rate, which the company said is below typical rates in the Bitcoin-backed lending market. Yeah, well, I suppose that's right. But, dude, 8%. Wow, that's a lot of bread. Quote, the industry norm from borrowing at fixed rates against Bitcoin is a 1-year term. At Avon, we have 10x the industry standard, unlocking a wide variety of use cases previously not feasible, Avon's Susin Lee said, speaking at the Bitcoin conference. Borrowers will pledge Bitcoin through custody and infrastructure provided by BitGo Incorporated and BitGo Bank and Trust, which is a federally regulated digital asset bank. The structure separates asset custody from card issuance, which is handled by Coastal Community Bank under a Visa Network license. The product includes no annual or origination fees and offers 2% cash back on purchases. Avon positions the card as a tool, that bridges crypto holdings with traditional credit access, aiming to expand the utility of Bitcoin within household balance sheets. The card also offers up to a 5-year interest-only period for added flexibility. The company is one of the few Bitcoin-backed loan providers offering both fixed term and interest-only plans in the same product. Quote, at Avon, we believe that the hardest money ever created deserves the best financial products. With the Avon Bitcoin card, we're just getting started, Lee said. Bitcoin-backed lending has grown with the rise of digital asset adoption, though it has faced scrutiny over risk management and collateral volatility. Fixed-rate, longer-term structures such as Avon's may appeal to borrowers seeking more predictable repayment schedules compared with margin-style loans that can face liquidation risk during price swings. Avon, founded in 2019, focuses on asset-backed lending products designed to lower borrowing costs. The company reports that its platform has saved customers more than $300 million in interest payments through March of 2026, and the launch signals continued convergence between crypto infrastructure and regulated financial services as firms seek to integrate digital assets into mainstream credit card markets while addressing risk, custody, and compliance requirements. There you go. A credit card that's basically a standing revolving line of credit. I mean, technically that's what credit cards are, but $1 million and they don't liquidate your Bitcoin? I mean, they didn't exactly say that, but it is inferred in the piece. So until, more not credible, until a little bit more information comes out about exactly what that means, I put up my Bitcoin, I lose 50% of my value, like because of a market crash or something like that. Is there a liquidation event? And the question becomes this: if I'm doing this because I don't want to have a taxable event, and I put up one Bitcoin and I get, I don't know, let's say that I'm not dumb and I only take out a $10,000 loan against it, and yet somehow or another the price of Bitcoin goes to, I don't know, $5,000, then if they liquidate that Bitcoin, am I on the hook for a taxable event? That needs to be, I'd like that to be very much more clear as to whether or not they're going to liquidate the Bitcoin, or if, and I can't remember the name of the company, I told you about it here on the show not terribly long ago, they're making home loans against Bitcoin, and in the event of a major price market drop, they weren't going to liquidate the Bitcoin. They were just going to hold on to it and just, I don't know, as long as you can still make the interest and the principal payments, then you're golden. They're not going to liquidate the Bitcoin. If this is the same feature, then they really should market that a little bit better, because people have lost their ass on these loans before. All right, Trump changes his tune on prediction markets just days after saying that he disliked them. Cointelegraph, written by Jesse Coughlin. President Donald Trump has softened his stance on prediction markets just days after he was bemoaning the surging interest and popularity of those betting platforms. Quote, I don't know. I know some people who are very smart. They like it. They disagree with it, but they like it, Trump told reporters in Florida on Saturday after he was asked about his earlier comments in which he said he did not support prediction markets. Quote, a lot of other countries are doing it, and when the other countries do it, we get left out in the cold if we don't do it, end quote. Trump's latest comments came after he told reporters at the White House on Thursday that he was not happy with prediction markets in response to a question about well-timed bets on events linked to the Iran war. Quote, well, the whole world, unfortunately, has become somewhat of a casino. And you look at what's going on all over the world in Europe, and every place they're doing these betting things. I was never much in favor of it. I don't like it conceptually, but it is what it is. I think that I'm not happy with any of that stuff. But they have all these different sites of predictive markets. It's a crazy world. It's a much different world than it was, Trump said. Prediction markets such as the popular Poly Market and Kalshi have surged in use over the past year, with the two platforms together seeing a record $23.6 billion in trading volumes as of March. And yes, we know about Trump's son being involved in Poly Market and Kalshi, yada, yada, yada. basically is a little background or information at the very end of that, so we won't belabor it. In fact, what we are going to do is we're going to get tasty over here on the Circle P. It's where I bring plebs with goods and services to plebs just like you who want to buy those goods and services, but you will be buying in a Bitcoin, because if you're not selling in a Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. And that is certainly not the case for my friend Kidwarp. He's got BitPaste. What is BitPaste, you ask? Well, Kidwarp's Vanilla Shop is bringing quality homemade BitPaste from our kitchen to yours. We source premium quality organic Madagascar vanilla beans and vanilla beans from different countries all over the world to show off the different flavors of vanilla beans. We use old-time traditional vanilla extraction processes and not modern quick brew methods. No corners are cut in our small batch production. Vanilla beans are chopped by hand and left to macerate for a minimum of 2 months in choice alcoholic spirits before we blend them to perfection to make premium quality BitPaste. Use BitPaste as a 1-to-1 replacement for vanilla extract in any recipe. Try some in your coffee or your tea. Use it in your favorite cookie or ice cream recipe, or mix it up and try it with something savory. And here's something that I would experiment with. Great Ghee is another vendor. If you were to mix a little bit of this vanilla paste with a big old glob of Great Ghee's ghee, which is clarified butter, and drop that on top of a freshly grilled steak, you know what? I'll bet it would be a lot better than you think. Anyway, Kidwarp's Vanilla Shop, you can get that at takemysats.com, and it's /Kidwarp's-vanilla-shop, but the URL to Kidwarp's Vanilla Shop is going to be in the show notes. It's a clickable link, so it's easy to get right here so you can get your BitPaste. And like I said, you're going to be buying in Bitcoin because Kidwarp sells it for Bitcoin, and if you use code BitcoinAnd, you will get 10% off. Use code BitcoinAnd at Kidwarp's Vanilla Shop, get 10% off, and it also lets Kidwarp know that I made a sale for him here on the Circle P, and that way he can get me back with Satoshis on the other side. Litecoin isn't something that I normally talk about, and it's also something that really hasn't been in the news as of late. You know, the shit coins are always going to be with us, just like Jesus said, but we don't hear about Litecoin very much, very often anymore. Not since, honestly, it had its heyday in 2018, 2019, and then we just kind of stopped talking about it because Sushi Swap came up, and next thing you know, DeFi basically took all the spotlight. But Litecoin is back in the spotlight, and it's not a good look. Litecoin rewrites transaction history after exploit. Apologizes for social posts. Andre Bagonsky is writing this one for decrypt.co. Litecoin was affected by a bug this weekend that allowed an attacker to transfer digital assets to a decentralized exchange, prompting the network to undergo a so-called reorganization to prevent someone from cashing in on crypto's latest vulnerability. No. It says cashing in on crypto's latest vulnerability. In this case, I don't want to make this a blanket statement. This is endemic to the Litecoin system. This is a problem with Litecoin. Now, yes, all the other shitcoins, they all got freaking problems. But let's be a little careful with the way that we word things over here at decrypt.co. The process, also known as a reorg, effectively purged faulty transactions from the network, which stemmed from a security flaw in Litecoin's Mimblewimble extension block privacy layer, the digital assets official X account said in a post. With Litecoin blocks produced every 2.5 minutes on average, a 13-block reorg essentially rewrote 30 minutes of the network's transaction history. This is not a good look. Eventually, entities mining Litecoin adopted a version of the asset's blockchain where the bug was never exploited. Although the attacker was ultimately stifled, They had taken advantage of what Litecoin's team said was a previously unknown vulnerability that allowed them to peg out coins from Mimblewimble. At the same time, the bug allowed the bad actor to disrupt mining pools through a denial of service attack. Litecoin acknowledged in an X post on Monday that it had deleted communications that followed the reorg, apologizing for trying to be humorous. Opt-in privacy features associated with Mimblewimble, a Harry Potter reference, was first proposed in 2019. In a since-deleted X post, Litecoin said that the network's plumbing, quote, was working throughout the entire process, and reorgs naturally purge faulty transactions, effectively sending them through the poop chute, like they were never there, end quote. The comparison didn't land with Taylor Monahan, an on-chain sleuth and noted security expert who warned in an X post that crypto projects should not strike a sanguine tone when unpacking technical issues that ultimately put users' money on the line. Litecoin's X account at times has elbowed other networks for facing technical hurdles. When Solana suffered from network congestion and degraded performance in January 2025, for example, Litecoin called Solana literally the pimple on crypto's ass. Aurora Lab CEO Alex Shevchenko speculated in an X post that the attack was coordinated, while noting in a separate post that NEAR Intense, which is a multi-chain protocol, had around $600,000 in potential exposure. He later questioned whether the bug had truly gone undetected because some miners were running software where the vulnerability had already been patched. Reorgs are possible on proof-of-work networks like Bitcoin, and the longest one that the Assets Network underwent rolled back 53 blocks, and that was back in 2010. At that time, a faulty transaction created 184 billion Bitcoin, which were later wiped away. At a total value of $4.2 billion, Litecoin stood as the 25th largest cryptocurrency by market cap on Monday, according to CoinGecko, and the digital assets price peaked around $410 nearly 5 years ago, while recently changing hands at $55. Wow. So after all this time, Litecoin peeks its head up above water to basically sneeze and blow snot all over everybody. It's a shame, but, you know, what are you going to do? It's going to happen. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities. Brent North Sea oil up 2.5% to 110.86. Holy shit. West Texas Intermediate up 3.4% to 99.66. Natural gas up a quarter to $2.55 per thousand, and gasoline is up 0.8% to $3.52 per gallon. Merbon crude almost up 3 points to $107.22. As you might expect, all metals are down today. Palladium down 1.25. Gold is down 2 points to $4,597.06. Platinum down 2%. Silver down almost 3 to $72.09. Copper is down 1.6. Ag is mixed today as usual. Biggest loser is lumber, 2% to the downside. Biggest winner is wheat, 3.7% to the upside. Live cattle is up 1.6%, lean hogs up a quarter, and feeder cattle are up just over 1 point. The S&P is down 2/3. The NASDAQ is down 1 1/3. The Dow, showing some resilience here, is actually up 0.15%, and the S&P Mini is down just over a full point. And then there's Bitcoin struggling again. We were having a really good Sunday, and then yesterday hit, and whatever, dude. Saylor announced that he bought more Bitcoin, and almost immediately we start seeing a downtrend. It's like he's an albatross, man. Anyway, price is at $75,910. That's a $1.52 trillion market cap, and we can only get 16.6 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,021,794.9 of. Average fees per block, 0.02 BTC on a per block basis. Let's see. About 38 blocks carrying 66,000 transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 4 sats per vbyte. Low priorities get you in at 2. And we've got a bump in hash rate. We're back up to 941 exahashes per second. That's more than enough for me. From Stork Chain cometh yesterday's episode of Bitcoin, and Nick Dose with 200 sats says cheers. Oh, and Sats McJ, 2100 sats says thank you, sir. No, thank you. Nostragang with 101 says nothing. And BTC on board with 100 sats says shitcoin derangement commence. Ha! That's about right. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. United States SEC seeks comment on NYSE ARCA proposal for 85% eligible asset rule in crypto ETF listings. And if you don't know what that means, Naga Avan Nameo is going to tell you about it here from theblock.co. The US SEC is asking for public comment on a proposed NYSE ARCA rule change that would alter how crypto commodity exchange traded products are structured. In a notice published on Monday, the SEC said NYSE ARCA wants to amend its generic listing standards for commodity-based trust shares so that at least 85% of a trust's net asset value consists of assets already allowed under existing listing rules. The remaining 15% could be held in other assets that do not independently qualify so long as the trust still meets the rest of the rule book according to the filing. NYSE said the threshold is meant to allow broader product design while keeping the bulk of exposure tied to assets that meet existing surveillance-linked eligibility criteria. I love that. Existing surveillance-linked eligibility criteria. Jesus, we live in a shitty world right now. The proposal also said listed and over-the-counter derivatives would be counted using aggregate gross notional value, not just market value. The filing gave a few concrete examples, like a trust holding Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, and XRP alongside a small sleeve of non-qualifying digital assets would pass if 95% of NAV met the standards. A trust holding Bitcoin plus OTC call options on a Bitcoin ETF would fail if only about 71% of the exposure qualified. Now, the proposal also narrowed the definition of what counts as a commodity for these generic listings. Non-fungible assets and collectibles would be explicitly excluded, so no Ether rocks, no Pepe frogs, all right? Though the exchange notes that it could still seek separate approval for products holding those assets later on. The filing reflects a broader shift in the SEC's approach to crypto listings with a growing focus on standardized frameworks rather than one-off approvals. Paul Atkins was sworn in as SEC chairman in April of 2025, over a year ago, and the agency has since leaned harder into clarity and product architecture rather than the enforcement-first tone that dominated much of the Gary Gensler era. In recent weeks, the SEC has advanced a crypto safe harbor proposal, coordinated with the CFTC on broader digital asset guidance, acknowledged flaws in past enforcement, and carved out a path for some crypto interfaces to avoid broker registrations. So it just means that these ETFs are going to have to be really careful about what they're backing the trust with. And this could, this type of thing, depending on exactly what happens after, because this is just proposed rulemaking, so there's a comment period. They'll review the comments. They'll probably rewrite the thing. We have no idea where it's going to go. But if the numbers hold, then it could mean that, I don't know, that strategy, or not strategy, but IBIT might have to actually supplement some of its, what it's backing its Bitcoin IBIT trust with. Because right now it's basically solid 100% Bitcoin. but this thing may actually let them back their trust with some other things. It's kind of confusing, I know, but what's really important here is that the SEC seems to still be doing things and reaching for stuff when it comes to Bitcoin. So we'll see where this lands and whether or not it'll be good or bad. But before that, we've got this from billionaire Tim Draper. Remember what I was saying about fear-based marketing? Well, Tim's a master at it. You should be scared if you don't own Bitcoin. I mean, it works in my favor because I hold Bitcoin, but dude, fear-based marketing is unethical, pal. Micah Zimmerman, Bitcoin Magazine. Speaking on the Nakamoto stage, Tim Draper told attendees that Bitcoin had entered the financial mainstream and that governments now roll out the red carpet for the industry. He said the community is starting to feel like something is happening as adoption grows, and he cast that shift as the early phase of a larger transition in the money system. In his view, people will move in stages. First, and this is important, first from dollars to stable coins, and then from stable coins to Bitcoin as the final store of value and unit of account. Draper praised Satoshi Nakamoto's design of BTC as a system with no governance control, no middlemen banks, no government control, no middlemen banks, and no traditional account records. He described his own early journey with the asset, including buying large amounts of Bitcoin, then losing those holdings amid front-running the failures at Mount Gox. That episode led him to question whether the experiment was worth the risk until he watched crypto usage spread in markets around the world and decided to buy more Bitcoin. To illustrate the fragility of fiat money, Draper told a personal story about a $1 million bill that his father gave him when he was young. The bill turned out to be an honest-to-God Confederate note, but had no value, which he held up as a warning that government currencies can fail, leaving savers with worthless paper. He connected that story to his decision to purchase Bitcoin from the U.S. government in an auction of seized coins where he paid above market price because he viewed Bitcoin as a superior long-term asset. Draper outlined a scenario in which retailers began by accepting Bitcoin alongside other payment methods and then transitioned to accepting only Bitcoin. In that world, he said, consumers would rush to banks to pull out their money and convert it into BTC as trusted national currencies decline. He told the audience that anyone who manages a family ought to have about 6 months' worth of Bitcoin as protection against such a breakdown. He extended that warning to sovereigns facing inflation or fiscal stress. If a government encounters hyperinflation and holds no Bitcoin on its balance sheet, Draper argued, its currency and the wealth of its officials could become worthless in real terms. Quote, you should be scared if you don't own Bitcoin. Should be very, very worried, Draper said that he is telling people these days, adding that those without exposure should be very scared. Draper closed with a call to action aimed at the entire BTC ecosystem around him. He said that, quote, those of us who have Bitcoin are going to help steer the world as legacy currencies lose value. And he told attendees to go home and tell their families to buy Bitcoin, their governments to buy Bitcoin, and their friends to buy Bitcoin. Addressing founders and builders, he urged entrepreneurs to, quote, push it as hard as you can, saying that broad BTC ownership is both a hedge against currency risk and a path to a new monetary standard. Now, there's a lot of stuff that I agree with Tim Draper about, but he does have a tendency to flip-flop on his views of Bitcoin. And right now, since he's on the main stage at the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, he is definitely pro-Bitcoin. This is a man who understands how to market. I don't like the fear-based marketing. I never will. Is it effective? Shit, yeah, it's effective. But it's unethical, man. You should be very scared. I just don't think it's cool to frame it that way. But, whatever. If it gets people to actually get into the lifeboat, whatever. Okay, on to this one. Fed confirms what tech developers have feared for 2 years. Jose Antonio Lanz is writing this one for Decrypt. The Federal Reserve just put a number on something developers have been experiencing for 2 years. A new study by Fed economists Leland D. Crane and Paul E. Soto found that employment growth among U.S. programmers dropped roughly 50% after ChatGPT launched in November of 2022. Before that, programmer-intensive jobs were growing at around 5% annually, well above the overall labor market. Since then, growth has fallen sharply. In the sectors most concentrated with programmers, like IT services and software development, it has essentially flatlined. This is the first Federal Reserve level study to directly link AI adoption to a measurable occupation-specific decline in developer hiring, pointing to AI as the cause of an occupation-specific shock. The tech sector took a beating in 2022 from interest rate hikes, the end of the pandemic digital boom, and the crypto crash. Skeptics have always argued that those factors alone explain the developer slowdown. Crane and Soto addressed that directly. They built a counterfactual. How many programmers would exist if their share within each industry had stayed constant? And they found programmer employment still falling by about 3% per year, even after stripping out those effects. Non-AI exposed occupations showed no comparable dip. Stretched over 3 years, the gap amounts to roughly 500,000 jobs that would likely have existed without the rise of large language models. The authors strongly caution against reading this as a direct count of job lost. Many affected workers probably found work in adjacent fields, and the study does not capture broader macroeconomic feedback, but the signal is there. The employment gap didn't open until mid-2024, roughly 18 months after ChatGPT landed. The researchers suggest companies needed time to see LLM capabilities improve enough to trust them before pulling back on headcount. Whether that reflects actual productivity gains or just the expectation of them, the data doesn't really resolve. The study shows that programmers are the most AI-exposed occupational group in the country, which tracks with actual usage data. Anthropic's economic index shows that computer and mathematical tasks like coding, debugging, and software architecture account for roughly a third of all Claude.ai conversations and nearly half of enterprise API traffic. Should be a big concern there. There should be a very big concern there. The longer-term concern is the pipeline, however. A Decrypt report last year documented accelerating AI-driven layoffs across white-collar sectors, with Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei warning that up to 50% of entry-level roles could disappear within 5 years. The Fed study adds institutional weight to what was previously anecdotal. A Harvard study of 62 million automatic data processing payroll workers found that junior developer employment drops roughly 9 to 10% within 6 quarters when companies adopt a generative AI, while senior employment barely moves. Quote, if AI disproportionately affects junior positions, it could have lasting consequences for the college wage premium, upward mobility, and income disparities, Harvard researchers wrote. Beyond the Fed, other analysts are raising concerns over tech jobs slowing due to AI automation and replacement. A recent multi-university survey of 69 economists, 52 AI experts, and 38 super forecasters found broad agreement that faster AI progress means lower labor force participation, including among researchers who previously held the augment, not replace consensus. The Fed researchers didn't frame the findings as catastrophic. Wages for programmers haven't declined yet. The effects has shown up in the headcount, not pay. Job postings stabilized in 2024 and have ticked slightly upward since. The authors note that cheaper AI-assisted programming could open new markets and grow total demand for developer labor over the long run. Crane and Soto describe their work as, quote, only a first step. The study was published as a preliminary designation, meaning it hasn't completed the full Fed review process, but it's the first step produced inside the Federal Reserve with the methodology and institutional weight that it carries. Okay, so that's the article, and there's a lot of stuff in here, but the first thing that I want to address is this. Right now, and I kind of believe for the foreseeable future, AI is not capable of handling very, very, very large projects. And I don't mean just coding. Like let's say somebody starts using AI to help them with construction logistics of a 40-story building. You know, AutoCAD or Autodesk, the makers of AutoCAD, have a whole suite of products. And one of them, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, helps you develop given blueprints. And so you kind of need to feed it the data of what the building is going to look like, and, you know, the floors and how they're shaped. And like you basically give it the technical drawings, and it goes through, and it will, and this is before AI. And it would help you construct how much wood you had to buy, and how many panes of glass you needed, and how much piping and electrical cable, and blah, 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 blah. And it would literally do all that shit, right? But it was going to need help. It needed a user to help it along and say, no, that's not right. Well, now there's AI. And I guarantee you that Autodesk is not going to not put AI inside their product. So whatever it is this particular product's name is that I can't remember right now, it either already has it or it's coming. But these projects, if you're just building a house, sure, maybe. But if you've got a 40-story building, I can guarantee you're going to need a human to actually do this, because there's too much. AIs have a tendency to lose context and this is just me when I'm doing, like, if I'm using it to either, you know, actively journal about something, or if I'm using it to, I don't know, come up with some kind of, maybe a show plan or something. After a while, it doesn't matter what I'm writing. And it doesn't matter what model. Eventually the model starts losing context, and all of a sudden it's like it doesn't remember what you talked about. I can't imagine 1 million lines of code in a software project and Claude being able to just hammer out the whole thing. So I think one of the next jobs that's going to come up is like software, artificial intelligence written software manager. Somebody who can basically chunk out stuff and understands, okay, this chunk I need to go over to Claude with, and not really give it the rest of it. I'll make those connections later, or something around those lines. I just don't see these LLMs, at least right now, being able to handle mega projects. Small projects, like somebody tasks you at, like, let's say a public library to write, I don't know, something that you can hang off the library's website that, I don't know, does a particular kind of search for remote materials at other libraries. We used to have one of those. I used to work at Texas Tech. The library still probably has that feature. And the guys that I was in the office with, they're the guys that built that, right? That one, I could see a room full of programmers going down to one. As long as these projects stay kind of like smaller. But if you get into really heavy duty engineering, really heavy duty construction engineering, big projects, AI will be present, but it will need a human to help interface how that project uses AI. So there'll be a call for AI project managers. That's what it was. That's what I was thinking about. Artificial intelligence project managers, a human being that can interface with everybody else and AI and the project, and have some kind of notion as to what this project is actually supposed to look like, and get that information from all the rest of the members of the team. And there would probably be 3 or 4 AI managers. So I'm not really all that concerned with the loss of jobs. I am concerned with where's all the money going to come from now. now that we could build all these mega projects with like 4 or 5 people, well, not 4 or 5 people, but 4 or 5 people that are interfacing with the rest of the group. And now you don't have to hire an extra 100, 200, 300 people to be able to do all this shit. There's going to be a lot of people that are going, well, now we can finally build this. And all these projects probably that never were going to see the light of day, all of a sudden are made fucking possible. And we're going to need liquidity for that. Money printer go burr. And while it was going burr, Jack Dorsey was buying Bitcoin. Block nears 9,000 Bitcoin in its treasury after its first quarter edition. CoinDesk Francisco Rodriguez. Block said that it added 114 Bitcoin in the first quarter, bringing its corporate holdings to 9,000 Bitcoin, worth about $691 million, according to a public proof of reserves dashboard. It held exactly 8,883 Bitcoin by the end of last year. Adding in the 19,357 Bitcoin held on behalf of customers, the payments company co-founded by former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey said that it's now responsible for 28,355 Bitcoin worth $2.2 billion. Holy smokes, dude. The owner of Square and Cash App said that the dashboard is a point-in-time snapshot and not a full audit of solvency, though it plans to publish regular third-party reports. The snapshot reflects balances as of March 2026 and is backed by third-party audit checks and cryptographic signatures that users can verify independently. This is what I want for strategy, by the way. The company published wallet addresses and signed messages on-chain, allowing anyone to confirm ownership without access to those private keys. Why can't strategy do this? I know the argument. I get the argument that Saylor's making. He doesn't want anybody to know exactly the public addresses. Dude, those are already exposed. Those addresses are exposed. That doesn't mean that we know where they are, but if you're worried about, I don't know, AI or quantum computing, dude, those addresses are already freaking exposed, right? Why can't you just say, all right, fine. We'll do transparency, because that is still one thing that we do not have out of strategy at this moment in time, is a real clear view of exactly how much Bitcoin they hold. I mean, if you're going to hold as much Bitcoin as he says he does, you should kind of be prepared to put your money where your mouth is and let us actually see it. Otherwise, I don't really know how much you have. Anyway. I'm sorry, I'm on this a little bit too much. Drop Saylor a bunch of messages on social media and say, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. Jack Dorsey's doing it. You need to start doing it too. Maybe he'll actually listen. Who knows? Anyway, I'll see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.